Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is Allison. A short note to say that the video that follows is current for people wanting to apply to UAL research degrees for the 25-26 entry.
Okay, so welcome. If you're listening to this, this is a proposal workshop or presentation to support applying for a research degree at UAL for 2024-25 entry. And we are going to introduce ourselves. So I'm speaking, so I'll just continue speaking. My name is Allison Green. I am Director of Doctoral Training and Development at University of the Arts London at the Doctoral School. I'm also a PhD supervisor. I'm a reader in art, curating, and culture. And that's probably enough for now. So over to you, Bob.
I am Dr. Joanne Bob Worley, commonly known as Bob. I am similarly Director of Doctoral Training and Development, and I am also a PhD supervisor at UAL.
Great. So we are going to lead you through what will be most likely about a kind of 25 to 30-minute presentation that we hope will give you sort of a good grounding to approach applying for a PhD and give you a sense of sort of what doing a PhD at UAL will be like. So the first thing that we have to share here is a Padlet. And this is a digital platform on which is collected various bits of information at your fingertips that we hope you'll find useful. So it includes a link to the place to, say, search for researchers who are active at UAL. It includes a link to the application portal. It includes a PDF of the research degrees handbook. It includes some other resources that don't come from UAL, but that we think are good to kind of get you into that or not like test your ideas out in relationship to sort of, PhD frameworks and those kinds of things. And maybe importantly, maybe possibly most importantly, because this is a recorded session and not a live one. There is a column where we invite anybody to pose questions on that Padlet, and we will endeavor to answer those questions so that you can see questions that have been asked in the past. But you can also use it as a live space in order to reach us with whatever your question or concern is, and we hope that you use it. So this Padlet is accessible through this QR code, which should pop it right up on your channel. And so what you'll see on your device, so what you'll see is you'll see some columns, and you'll see the possibility of adding things to that, adding comments or questions and so on. That's the lovely thing about a Padlet.
So just open your phone up, open your device up, and your camera, point your camera towards it, and it should take you, the QR code should take you to the Padlet.
Straight there. Okay, so Bob, maybe you take up this first one. Here's where we go into we're going in deep.
We are. So what is a research proposal? So the idea of a research proposal on the surface seems quite straightforward. And we have a kind of a series of guidelines within UAL to take you through that process. But I think it's worth just anticipating what the proposal does. So we kind of think that the proposal is a kind of a persuasion device, and that it's a kind of a strange document because it articulates something at the beginnings of your journey, your research project journey, a future idea, but it also communicates and it should communicate what is not yet known. And that the attempt to do that with confidence is what we'd like to ask you to do. So the idea of that confidence is part of that persuasion device. So we're really clear that when you come to us, you are already expert. So it's about laying down that expertise in writing in that research proposal and articulating practice if that is part of your research proposal. But there's a kind of a discomfort there, and we want to kind of acknowledge that, but also settle into that, in that this is an exciting moment where you articulate the beginnings of the journey, but also we'd like you to kind of speculate and say, and I want to be here, and here is how I might get there. So questions to think about. The document of the research proposal acknowledges first eyes on your project. So there's a kind of a question here. What do you think potential supervisors and research leaders expect as they open up the document? So they haven't met you yet. This is the very first time then you're not there in front of them to tell them the story. It's on the page. What are they looking for? So I kind of noted down kind of a few things. So the idea of understanding the ask. What are the requirements?
Wait. Hang on, before you do that, let's just encourage people to pause your video at this moment and take 60 seconds just to note down that some response to that. And so when you are done with that, turn your video back on. And now, Bob, go on.
So the idea of, and this may indeed be on your list that you have just made, that you understand the ask, the idea of the research proposal, and that it's nice that also that it's page numbered, that idea of the first eyes. That I kind of consume this information when I kind of get this through email form usually, and I might be sat with someone or invite other eyes into your project, and I might go, oh, that thing that phrase they used on page 3. Look at that. Let's discuss that. Let's entertain that. See how that sits in our bodies and our thinking for this project. So it just helps, that kind of signposting helps us orientate our conversations from kind of forward, kind of towards the interview process. Similarly, kind of the idea of the grammar, that things are proofread. It gives an articulation, this idea of persuasion device. It gives an articulation of kind of that professional academic articulation, of which the PhD is, that you do subscribe to that. So what it does is as a kind of expertise, it says, I can do this. So it both acknowledges that as a persuasion tool, but also when I'm reading it as first eyes, when I come across a misspelling, what it does, it takes me out of the document, and I have to then struggle to settle back in and be part of your narrative. So the less that happens, the better. The more I am immersed in this beautiful thing that is your research proposal and your project, the better, in order that I can understand and dream into the possibilities of it. So we have a kind of a list. Each proposal, so the next slide, each proposal is different, and also each proposal is special. And we suggest that a strong research proposal, and this is within any discipline, might articulate the following. So it formulates a precise, interesting research question. And that idea of precision and interesting are utterly contextual, and something which you may kind of ponder on and kind of bring your own body to answer that. What is kind of precision for you, and what is interesting for you, and indeed for your field in which you place this research proposal? And that it established relevance and value of the proposed research question in the context of current academic thinking. So when you provide your bibliography, that idea of current academic thinking is really important. So when we look at the bibliography and indeed references to support, to help the structure of your research proposal, to reference your expertise, these are the things I've read. This is the practice I'm aware of. That the majority of that is current. Because your PhD, your PGR project comes and kind of is placed on top of all that context. And what you're saying is, I'm bringing my substantial new insight on top of all these other contexts, all these other things known about my field, my project areas, my discipline. So we're looking for both a knowledge of current academic kind of thinking within your field, but also that your sources and your references do some of that work for you. But that's kind of a playing clever. That it describes data, and data might not be the right wording for you. Kind of put the right word in here that works for your project, for your discipline, or source material that your research requires. It outlines clear and practical methods, the doing of the thing, the how-tos, which enable you to answer the research question. And again, that you might, the research question might be research inquiry, it might be research questions, so it might be multiple, and that they speak back to the question. So the methods connect with the question. So those two kind of are in a conversation with each other. It states clearly what you hope to discover. Again, this idea of speculative, what you hope to discover at the end of your research and what new areas it might open up. So that's our thinking on the research proposal.
So now we want to just move to a little bit of a deep dive into the research question. And as Bob sort of already alluded to, there could be questions. This is just the singular for the moment. The research question is also reflected in the title. And we've written that the provisional title can be about 10 words in length. We call it provisional because it's not surprising and often expected that the title of your research project, which you might have now, it might change over time, and we expect and we'd like to kind of welcome that. But nonetheless, the words in this question and title should be chosen quite carefully. They're each word really matters. Each word holds in it kind of multiple references, and they sit in relationship to each other. You kind of construct this this way that they help represent both the topic and the doing of the topic. So on the Padlet, we've shared with you something called the practicing research cards. It's designed as a deck, designed to be actually used in conversation between people as well as individually. But we pulled out a few prompts from those this is like a really good resource that could help you check whether you're thinking in a 360-degree way across your project. But here, from the practicing research cards, we've drawn out some prompts. So these are things you want to think about when you're planning this research question or questions. What is the central question that your research project will attempt to answer? Why is your research question important to answer? Not just what it is, but why do you want to do it, and why do you want to do it now, and why is it you who's doing it, right? And lastly, how could your research question be refined to make it more manageable to answer? And this really speaks to something very important about a proposal for a research degree, is this idea that somehow in the proposal, your reader gets a sense of your ability to do this project, and the idea that the project can be done in this place, in this time, with the facilities and the capacities that are there within a research degree to support you. So it may be that this is an ongoing process of saying, well, I've got this idea, I've got this desire to do this thing, and here I'm going to draw some lines around it. And then I get that sorted. But actually, I need to do that again. I need to focus it further. I need to ask the question a different way. I need to check in on whether the kind of urgency or the relevance of my work, and so on and so forth. And actually, my experience of working with students on theses and dissertations over years is that actually a colleague of mine always said, like, you start with a hand and you end up just doing a finger. You start with a hand, you think, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. And then in the end, you just do the finger. And the finger, it just opens up into all sorts of other things. So moving forward, some thoughts about definitions and using particular words, terminologies, specialist terms, concepts, referencing to ideas or objects in your proposal. This is a reminder about why we ask that you define these terms along the way and within your project. I really like to think about when you use a word, think about kind of surrounding that word with some tools in order for the person reading it to understand not only what it might mean in some sort of definitive way, but what it might mean to you and why it's important within this project. So you can assume that your reader is in the kind of research space, maybe has knowledge of working with PhD students, has their own research interests, but you can't know whether they know what you know. And moreover, what's really important is that we should be, I want to say, we all should be thinking about making our research more accessible to lots of people, not just people who are experienced researchers, not just the people who you're sort of trying to kind of project yourself forward to, but actually anybody has the capacity to understand what's important about research. And so that makes it even more important to say what you mean and to do a little bit of that unpacking around the words, around the kind of objects that you may bring in. Objects, I mean, in this general way of like, objects of study, ideas, and so on. And tell us what you mean. Tell us what you're thinking about. Tell us how those things are meaningful for you. And the thing that's really interesting about these, it moves very quickly from sort of a definition to sort of how that thing is situated within different kind of fields of inquiry or bodies of knowledge. You might tell us about how a particular person defines or understands that, and how you inflect that. And then suddenly you're defining the discourse, right? So in this second task, for which we also would like you to pause the video and take 60 seconds just to do some individual thinking, we would like you to try to define this field of inquiry. So we suggest choose one or two fields of inquiries. Many times our research crosses over into multiple ones or is by design trans or intersectional. But choose one or two. Take a minute to write down the important names, groups of thinkers or makers connected to your chosen fields. And I like to think about this field as in sort of twofold. One is that it defines an area. It's like a territory, or it's a kind of place, or it's a place that's already inhabited. And then also what it does is by defining that, and you're doing the defining, you're saying where the edges of it are, where the boundaries of it are, or what's in and what's out. You're also suggesting sort of this possibility of a way to navigate it, a way to enter it, and a reason to enter it as well. So with that said, now pause your video and take 60 seconds. And now we're back. So moving forward to the next one.
Thinking about kind of this field of inquiry, and another kind of in terms of if practice features into your research proposal as a kind of a definition, one of those key terms, keywords. And it's something which, if you're ruling in, will get explored in interview. It's worth just pausing for a second and thinking about how you currently articulate practice within your research proposal, and also how you might. So just kind of a few moments just to pause and to just settle into this idea of practice. So practice research is an umbrella term. It's one we use in the UK. Under this umbrella of practice of research, it's useful to state what specific which methods, the how-tos, you're intending to work with, work through, work alongside, work in, work against practice. So all those different possibilities of practice and what they then do for your thinking, your research question, your research inquiry. So within practice research, this umbrella term, here are some of those methods which are articulated. Practice as research, also known as PAR. Artistic research, and this is used within Europe, particularly Scandinavian doctoral communities. AR, artistic research. Practice-based research, practice-led research, research-led practice, etc. And the list goes on. So if you are kind of thinking about practice research within your research proposal, it might be that you have kind of a sense of, say it's practice led, for example, just looking up practice led, kind of there's so many texts within different disciplines, within different fields, just to have something to articulate, to position yourself within that, just to take you a little bit further down this idea of what practice does and what it might do for your project. So these are kind of some things to think about. What bubbles up, what arises within practice research. So it kind of has an impact on the research question. So practice research begins with the research question, as all research projects do, a problem to be explored. This question guides the research process, so it starts to already kind of, in terms of even within thinking about it within the research question, it already begins to, the journey that you're going to take changes and shifts. So this question guides the research process and helps to focus the investigation. Contextualization, so practice research often involves an examination of the social, the historical, the cultural context in which artistic work, and that artistic work, with that, whatever that might mean for you, for your project, is produced and received. And this contextualization helps to situate the work, again, being in that field, within a larger framework and to identify its significance. So thinking about context and practice research will support your articulation of your research project. And reflexivity, your practice research often involves a high degree of reflexivity, with the researcher reflecting on their own positionality. Alison talked a little bit about this before, that idea of the why me, why this research project, why in my body, but that might also trickle out and make the research different. The idea of positionality and the ways in which their own biases and assumptions may impact the research process. And it's an iterative process. So practice research is often an iterative process, with the researcher revising, refining their research question and methods as they collect and analyze data. And again, data might not be the right framing for what you do. A proposal might acknowledge this adaptability as an approach. So you might kind of, but I appreciate, in terms of, we'll come to challenges later, but yeah, I appreciate that this might shift, might change, because I'm working within practice research. Creative practice. So practice research often involves the use of creative practice as a means of generating knowledge and exploring research questions. And this can involve the creation of new works of design and art and performances, installations, for example, and that context that also might exist within your bibliography, that might exist in terms of where the traditions of these new works come from, where these contexts might be referenced in your proposal. You might want to talk about those. Collaboration. The practice research often involves other bodies collaborating with artists, with audiences, and that's in inverted commas. So audience might not be the right word. It might be participant, if we're working with VR practices, for example, scholars or experts in the field. And this collaboration can help to generate new insights and perspectives and bring diverse knowledge and expertise to the research process. And when we collaborate, we also have questions about ethics as well, when bodies come up to bodies, and we'll come to that later in a second as well.
So the next thing we wanted to share with you are the questions that are part of the interview. So if you were to submit an application and be invited to an interview, all students are asked the same questions. And I think it's useful not only just to share that, and actually this would be shared with you at that stage anyway. But it's also, these questions could be really interesting and important for you to have on your mind when you're putting your proposal together. Not so much that you need to sort of strategically link them or anything, but because the questions actually prompt questions that you should be asking yourself as you put that proposal together. So maybe not surprisingly, the questions are really linked to the whole process anyway. So in this interview, you would be asked, the first question would be, what are your motivations for undertaking doctoral research at UAL? And again, this may be implicit or explicit within your proposal, but I think it's really important to know, why me, why here, why now? and so on. So I think kind of that sense of motivation and this sense of a kind of a person behind the project is a really strong one to make evident in some ways. The second interview question is, what is the question, problem, or hypothesis driving your research project? So we're right back to the research questions, or maybe these could be described as aims and objectives. And again, on the Padlet, we have a nice resource that helps you think through aims and objectives if those are unfamiliar words for you. The third question is, what do you hope to discover during your research? And Bob's already mentioned this a couple times. We really hope that you have genuine new learning, knowledge, understanding, and so on, and that this is actually, deeply embedded within the process. You don't start a PhD in order to just find out what you already know. This isn't what it's about. But I think to be able to say what those things are and project yourself into that future moment where you're completed or you're nearing completed, and to be able to, even at the beginning, to see that direction of travel, to imagine what the outputs are, to imagine the things that you hope to achieve, is really important and fundamental in putting together a proposal, because it has to do with like research design, knowing that you need to put some things in place in order to reach those goals and objectives or outcomes or whatnot. The fourth we've already touched on as well. What disciplinary fields is your research situated in, and how will your project contribute to existing knowledge? That second bit is the really essential core definition of what a PhD is. It's a contribution to knowledge that can be clearly articulated and shared with others, right? So to know what that is really important. To make a claim, to be able to articulate that, and to be able to say that to others is really important. And again, this will change, but to be able to name it at the beginning is also important. 5, what existing work in your field do you consider to be the most relevant to your project? These could be new developments. They could be theoretical work being done by people. It could be practice-based. So this is where you start to position yourself, think about gathering these things together and say, these are the things that are important, and here I am in that mix in relationship to those. The sixth question, what are the main challenges you may face in your research? These could be intellectual, these could be practical. They can run across a range, but the purpose of asking this question is not to test you and see if you come up, ready or lacking, but actually to hear you thinking openly and pragmatically about how you're going to undertake this project. What skills do you have? What skills do you need to learn? What kind of technical facilities that might you need? Maybe there's stuff to do with the languages in which the research you're interested in is written in, and what you might need to do in order to access that. It might be to do with travel, or it might be to do with the accessibility of resources, anything. It might be other things to do with your own situation that you need to think through in order to make this thing happen. And what we can say is the interview is this first moment of starting to engage in that conversation, starting to engage in that negotiation to test whether this is a possible project and who's going to support you, and whether this institution is the place, this university is the place where that can be supported. So really, really important, and important just to, be real about this. We want your success as much as you do. So it's really important to be your feet on the ground on these things.
And number 7, what work have you already done in your area of study that you're particularly proud of? And we really like to ask this question, this idea of showing your expertise and presenting your expertise that you already have, and noting those moments of pride in your work, in your research, or kind of what you consider to be your area of study. And how then, and this is this idea of articulating confidence in the thing not yet known. And we want you to be kind of proud of kind of this moment and of the potential of joining us at UAL. 8, what are the research methods you propose to use? Are they archival? Are they mixed methods? Are they co-design? Are they qualitative? Are they quantitative, etc.? And these might be multiple, they might be a few, they might be just give us what you have. That will shift and change. You will not know necessarily what your research methods are until you kind of come up and you make kind of plans in any given moment. Different moments in research projects need different things, those how-tos. But offer some up. These are the research methods that I anticipate using. 9, are there any ethical implications for your research? We think there are always ethical implications for research. That when you present, when you offer your body up and open your body, your project up towards other people's bodies, that there's a meeting. And that we anticipate that meeting and that we think about what that does and what that is and what it can be. And sometimes that process has a very particular set of questions, and sometimes those arise as we go through the process. But that you consider what are the ethical implications. And on the Padlet, there's some material there to help you with that process. So 10, are there any technical skills, languages, specific research methods, etc., that you will need to develop during your research? So these might be attached to colleges, for example. So thinking about where you kind of go into, you can in terms of supervision, think about where those reside. But are you thinking as this something that I might need up front? Some kind of training, perhaps some skilling that will help me along my research journey. And 11, the final one, role with your practice play. And we've kind of gone through that kind of a little bit earlier. Your practice play in your research inquiry, it has its own question. It's worth considering, not just as, and I'm doing this through practice. If you're doing this through practice of research, what else can you add to that? The hows, the who can you reference, who has done it before you, is really useful.
So just to pick up on the topic of ethics, you'll find the university's code of practice on ethics research in the research degree handbook, which is on the Padlet. So you can go in, and it's probably really worth looking at that to get a sense of sort of how ethics is defined within this university context. So here in this slide, we wanted to flag up that although a research degree is primarily a research project that's been defined by you, supported by a supervisory team, that's largely, self-generated, self-led, self-managed, et cetera, et cetera. There is this kind of bigger picture, and we really are emphasizing that to do a research degree is also to develop more widely as a researcher, as a practitioner, as potentially somebody to work in various environments where these skills and knowledges are valued. So beyond your specific project, we have this idea of a researcher development program. We use the term becoming a researcher. It's the name of our kind of core training program. And I think we like that because it suggests that no matter what stage you're at, you're always in a state of becoming. Yes, of course you are when you join the program, and it's we have a kind of core series that brings you in and supports you through the first 10 weeks of your time. But actually, we've kept that name to describe all of the skills and training package that we consider to be kind of fundamental, no matter what stage that you're at. In terms of research and development, you also want to be thinking about your participation in communities of practice, your sharing of your ideas, your giving your feedback to other people, allowing people to learn from you and learning from others in that. So we are not islands. We are not islands. We're part of webs and networks, and that's part of the reason you do this in a university. And so all of that is part of the offer and the invitation of coming to any university to do this work. And to say importantly, not all of that network is in the university. So we are really interested in the kind of porous boundaries of the university in relationship to other places, and more um, uh, kind of, let's say, nuanced or open or unhierarchical definitions of who is a researcher, what kind of research is recognized, and so on. Yes, what is academic and what is not academic, and where do those terms find their boundaries? Uh, you come on this program in order to learn. I think we've been saying this to some degree all along, and we just reemphasize it now. If you knew what you plan to know already, you could just write that up right now. So the purpose of this is to go on a learning journey and find something out that you don't already know or that other people don't already know. So that's going to be challenging to you and challenging to others. And lastly, part of the idea of research or development is to think in a kind of holistic way about the relationship between the PhD to other ambitions that you have, or this maybe what could be seen as your career path or your professional development or or the development of your practice and so on. So anybody listening to this will have a different set of concerns and expectations for what the PhD is doing for them. Where is it bridging you to? What is it facilitating? Where does it sit in relation to the other things that you value or are a kind of key part of your life? And those things are sort of, tangible and intangible. They're soft skills and hard skills. And what some people like to say is that 5-10 years down the line after you finished your PhD, actually the topic that you studied may or may not be what you are continuing to be, excited by or are working on. But it's the wider skills that you learn during that process that helps you continue on in a different way, at a different level, and it helps open up your horizons. I'm tempted to kind of move quickly through these because these are really reiterations of information that's already available to you about applying for a research degree at UAL. One important thing is that when you apply and when you go through the first stage of development on the research or degree program, you actually it's called an unnamed an unnamed degree. You get designated as being an MPhil or a PhD when you hit the next stage, which we call confirmation. Other universities call upgrade. So that's why there's this dual thing of MPhil or PhD, and we support both. It's important perhaps just to say about UAL here that it's a monotechnic that supports topics and disciplinary inquiry around art, design, and communication primarily, and a bunch of other things. So we're a monotechnic in the sense that we aren't a university that has a medical school, that has social science, that has hard science, that has humanities. Although many of those things you might find embedded in our disciplines because there's quite a lot of cross or transdisciplinary work going on. So we are interested in places, projects where those things meet. But I think in coming, if you come to UAL, I think once you enter in, first is maybe this feeling of like, oh my God, it's a world unto itself, and it's all art. It's all art, design, and communication and computing and all these other things. A wonderful bubble, I sometimes think of it as. And then you start to delve down and realize how complex that is. So it's both well defined in those terms, and then quite messy and emergent and porous in others.
And you may be thinking about putting your research proposal into different institutions, and and I would have use this proposal workshop to make your best case, your best research proposal, and then nuance it for each institution. So really kind of work out what kind of the angle is, what is the invitation, how do we see your work, how do we meet your work, how do and kind of what is it that you would like us to UAL to kind of bring to your research project. So think about this proposal workshop as creating kind of a skeleton document, and then apply it to different institutions if that's your intention, or if you kind of reapplying that you then kind of think about it afresh anew. So thinking about the research proposal for UAL, we think it's the most critical component of the research degree application. It's something which constantly gets referred back to. So that idea of new, fresh eyes, first eyes on it is important. So it's worth just asking yourself kind of at all points before submission, is it right? Have I chosen my right kind of keywords? And as we say here, it forms the basis for discussion at your interview. It is really the thing we kind of go to as substance. And if your application is successful, your proposal will then be used as a starting point for what we call the registration process. So it all kind of comes back to the research proposal. So think about kind of the research proposal as a thing of work, as this moment in which you both articulate where you've come from, your expertise, and where you're going towards. But it is a thing of work and worth working on as a thing of substance. So this is what we like of it. Please provide an outline, and within that outline, we'd like it to be typed and legible. We have old eyes. I'm speaking about my body here. So at least 11-point type, and it should not exceed 1,000 words. We're clear on that. That idea of being able to edit down a lot of information, and we'll come to on the next slide. There's a lot of information here for you to kind of work with and to nuance, but that it is within the 1,000 words. The bibliography is separate, but the title and everything that comes before the bibliography should be within the 1,000 words. There is a chance that it goes over this, that it will not be accepted. So we ask, and it's also a task. It's a researcher task to be able to do this. So you are, by submitting it, by doing this piece of work, this 1,000 words, you are saying, I can do this. You are putting yourself, this is this hopeful thing that you're putting yourself towards us and saying, look, I can already do this. This is my project. So following headings, and we suggest that you use these as subtitles within your research proposal. So the title, the subject area, aims, the objectives, the historical context, the contemporary context, the theoretical context. There's a lot of context there. Context is important. It's grounding. It's what holds the thing together in order that you can then move off and through and towards the gloriousness that is your research. The methodologies, so the frameworks of methods that you're going to use, the prediction of the form of the final presentation of your thesis. You might not know, but there's a sense that my thesis is going to be, you might be able to articulate my thesis will be practice research and it will have a written submission. This is the thesis. Or it may be that it's the thesis is 100% written. It may be that you say within the practice research, I intend to put on a series of performances. I intend to curate an event. I intend to work with this group of people. So it may be that in terms of the way in which the thesis is presented, you may be able to articulate and know that will change. We will not tie you down to these. We promise. We will not kind of stand there with a clipboard and a tick box and say, but you didn't do the thing that you said. But this is about confidence and saying, I think this is where I'm going. And things will change as you immerse yourself through the process. Ethical dimensions of the research, absolutely, yes, please. And again, refer back to that document on the Padlet. And an indicative bibliography. And as I said before, the bibliography is not part of those 1,000 words, but give a taste, a sense of where you're coming from. It's another context think of the indicative bibliography as another context. It's another grounding. We really pay attention to bibliographies because it actually articulates a lot about you, where you're coming from and where you're going towards. And visual evidence. So giving, if you're working with practice research, give a sense of the visuals and or other materials. There's room for that, absolutely, within the submission.
So I was just going to add, yeah, sort of top tip, we've already said it, but I'm just going to call it out again. Use these headings because these are the headings that we're asking you to write to. So use them in your document, and so that then the person reading can say, yes, I can see how they're responding to each one. So in a sense, this is the framework that we're expecting to see you respond to. Don't make up your own. Use ours. Speak to us. Accept that this is the kind of communication device. And I was also thinking about, I might just move to the next slide because, this just to acknowledge, this is really hard. This is really hard. It's really hard to do all of this stuff in so little space. And that's always what we hear. So we just want to acknowledge that. And I think the thing that we're kind of alluding to, is that this is it's an art and it's a craft to be able to summarize what you this big thing into something that somebody else can access, and that is the task here. So condense it down, think about the core, think about how what you write in reflects reflects and represents your project as it is. And also think about a kind of internal integrity to how these things fit in relationship to each other. So Bob earlier mentioned, different methods that you might use to find out or to discover or to kind of draw in the knowledge and information that will underpin your project. So think about how the methods line up with the contexts, right? How are they speaking to each other? How are they feeling like they're connected up? Like they're kind of they've been thoughtfully chosen so that they're going to work together rather than separate different things saying, oh, this is this and this is this and this is just a series of sort of chunks of things. Think about I guess the idea of coherence would be important, that it's coming together, that it's kind of coming together as one thing. But we acknowledge that this is very hard to do. Okay, well, we're winding down now. Just to say, we said this might be 25 to 30 minutes, and guess what? It's over 50. We're both very talkative people, but we hope you've enjoyed this. So this is just a reminder to that you can use the Padlet as a way of posing further questions, and we invite you to do that, and we hope that you do. You can find our emails through the UAL website pretty easily, Allison Green and Bob Wally. We hope to hear from you. We hope some of you apply. But even if you don't, we wish you best of luck on your journey wherever it takes you.
Good luck.
Stop recording.